resource governance, history, environmental and social sustainability, climate change, and the regulatory frameworks. He holds an MSc in Sustainable Resources, Economics, Policy and Transitions distinction from University College London 2020, an MSc in Economics distinction from the Now University Abuja in 2016, and a BSc in Economics second class upper from the University of Jos in 2022. He is a 2019 recipient of the United Kingdom's Foreign and Commonwealth Office Chevening Scholarship. Sammy leads Policifying, a social expertise network intent on automating a policy dialogue by simplifying economic, social, and sustainability policies. He loves simplifying the complexity of economics and sustainability to his audience. And today we are privileged to have him all to ourselves. Thank you so much, sir, for being here. We appreciate you. And over to you, sir. Students, can we welcome him virtually in the chats? Over to you, sir. Welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear, sir. Welcome.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me here. This should be my third time coming to the Electoral College. And my appreciation to everybody, both the faculty and the participants of this cohort. Am I the one sharing? Just a minute, let me see. Please, are you sharing from your end or am I sharing?
We are sharing, sir. We can see the screen.
Okay, fine. So I just have, these are the learning goals. But I know we can't talk, but if you can see anything in the learning goals on that slide, you can just indicate even with a thumbs up or any emoji you can use. If you can see anything, let me know. I'm talking to the participants. Or else I assume nobody saw anything. Okay, can you just type what you saw? I mean, I'm trying to look for something in that slide that says learning goals and expected outcomes. Can you just type what you saw? No, I'm not looking for the conventional things. I'm looking for something there. Okay, nobody. But can you see 2022 goals? So if you could see 2022 goals, I'm just trying to let you know that the learning goals are expected outcomes. I put 2022, which is like 3 years ago, because it's something that we should have known since yesterday. That's just why I put 2022. But then there's this Chinese proverb that says the best time to plant a tree was 100 years ago, and the next best time is now. So if you didn't know this yesterday, it's not too late that we are knowing it today. So my first slide is to define what policy is. This class is about policy, but when we go in, you will see that we will be discussing public policy, because we are not going to come and teach anybody here what to do with their own private policies. And this is not a commercial venture that will be looking at organizational policies. The essence of this class is public policy, but of course, we have to define what policy is. And I don't know if you're okay with the way the slides are being presented, if it is clear enough for you, just to be sure. And we say that anything that guides people, that tells people what to do by organizations, institutions, even in your houses, that's a policy. So policy guides decision making. It helps you to know let me say, the do's and don'ts, or it helps you to know where you want to start, why you have to start, when you need to start. And the examples I have there is like the national education policy. But this is just my broad definition of policy. And I told you that policy could be institutional, could be organizational, could be private, could be public. So if you have policies in your place of work, that's organizational policy. If you have policies in your religion or church or mosques, if you have policies, so there are some people that will tell you that the policy in their house is that you don't come home once it's 7 p.m. or once it's after 8. So that means the father or the mother of that house has set a policy, right? That's a family policy. An individual can have his policy and say, okay, he's not going to do this. That's what we can call principles. But for this class, being a public focus class and cohort, what we'll be looking at is strictly public policy. So public policy refers to the system of regulations, laws, actions, anything implemented by the government, right, to address issues that affect the public. And the government here could be federal government, could be state government, could be local government. That's for Nigeria that operates a three-tier system. That's the federal system. I hope you know that some countries have unitary system. Some countries do not have a federal system. They just have the central government and maybe regional government, or the central government are what they call municipals. But for the case of Nigeria, United States, and a few countries like Canada, we operate the federal system of government. That's why we have a three tiers. In formulating these policies, there are key features that are considered. One, for public policy, whether it starts from the bottom or it starts from the top, is government driven. It has the focus of the public. It should also be action oriented, and it should be dynamic. When something is dynamic, it just tells you it's not static. It's not static. It means it can change with time, it can change with need, it can change with purpose, and sometimes it can change with government. And that's what we are used to in Nigeria. We have a lot of change in our policies when there are changes in government. And it gets so bad that we call it policy somersault. Sometimes we call it policy inconsistency, and it has affected us to an extent. But then, why do you make policies, or how do you make policies? Everybody here is either I want to believe is either a male or a female, right? So even for the males that don't give birth, you know that there is a cycle to give birth. So the woman takes in, that's the woman gets pregnant. Let me use that. It takes 9 months for the child, plus or minus, to be born. So there is always a cycle. And the same thing with policy. There is a policy cycle. Most times we start by identifying a problem. Problems are not only always negative. So when there is a need to do something, even if it is not a negative problem, is also called a problem identification. Whichever way you identify the need for that policy, then you set the agenda. When you set the agenda, that's you prioritize the issues among competing concerns. So you see, the government, since we are defining public policy, or we define public policy, there are thousands and one concerns that the government needs to address, from insecurity to water shortage, to electricity shortage, to food insecurity, to unemployment, to inflation, different things. But you and I know that the government cannot do every of these things, especially at the same time. They could attempt to do as many as possible. They should do as many as possible. But even if they have to do all or do many, they will have to prioritize. So they could start with one, make some progress before they start the second one, or out of 100, they could start with 10. After a while, start with another 3. After a while, start with 7. But the issue is that in setting that agenda, you try to identify either the most important or the most critical. Then after that, you now decide, or that's when there is what we call the policy formulation. You develop the possible solution. So if hunger is our problem, after we've identified it and we've set the agenda that hunger is the first thing we want to address, If you are a local government councillor, a local government chairman, or a minister of agri, commissioner of agri, all the people concerned will now sit down to develop possible solutions or strategies that will address hunger, if hunger is an identified issue. If outbreak of cholera is the issue, the health professionals, social workers, and everybody concerned with the right expertise will also sit down to formulate a policy. So most times when it's cholera, we want to provide clean water, we want to provide ORS, So those things are the policy formulation stage. Now, when we formulate those policies, these decisions are now implemented, or rather, to implement them, you either make executive orders, because so these policies are not always things that are in the constitution, right? And because we are a country, some of these things have to be made into laws, or government has to have a backing. So if it is the one that falls within the purview of the government to just make pronouncements, give executive orders, why not? But sometimes some policies need to be sent to the state house of assemblies, local legislative arms, or the federal legislature, that's the Senate and or the House of Representatives, for them to be passed into law. So that's the policy adoption stage. When those policies are adopted, either through fiat, through lawmaking, through executive orders, they are now implemented. And to implement, you put those policies into actions through programs, through regulations or enforcement. So the federal ministry, FCTA, that's Federal Capital Territory Administration, decides to say that nobody will park on the right side of the road. But to get that, they've identified a problem. Perhaps that right side of the road is the one that causes accidents, or there are schools along that side, or there is a market along on that side of the road. And to do that, they've identified the problem. People have sat down, they've thought of it, and they're like, no, nobody should park on the right side of the road. It becomes a law, a policy, then it's implemented. For it to be implemented, people have to be aware, and there will be checks and balances. But because of implementation, you could find gaps. And this is a very important one. This is something also we don't always do. I know we are used to M&E, monitoring and evaluation. You don't wait for a policy, a program, or a project to finish. In the course of implementation, you evaluate these policies, evaluate these programs, evaluate these projects, and assess the effectiveness. So when something is effective, does not mean nobody is talking of whether the policy is in itself is good or bad. Now we're not looking at the impact of the policy. So I will give an instance, like fuel subsidy removal. We all know the impact on the economy of individuals. But I'm saying that if you have a policy, as you are implementing it, you assess or evaluate this policy. Is there a need to change this policy? Is there a need to drop it totally? Is there a need to go back to the drawing board, correct it, come back and put it in? Or is there a need to continue with it as it is? We need to evaluate policies. Most times, that is where you will be sensitive to your electorate, sensitive to the people at the grassroots, sensitive to anybody that is being impacted. If there was a mechanism that allows people to give feedback, this is where you need to go back after the evaluation. You can see the next thing, you adjust. So you modify, you improve, or you even discontinue the policy. But without you doing an evaluation, you wouldn't know. So there are, for public policy and for the purpose of this class, we are going to look at some types of public policy, and majorly we look at economic policies, social policies, sustainability policies. They can be intertwined. Most times they are. Either one affects the other one negatively or vice versa. Sometimes they go together. An economic policy is just a set of policies, strategies, actions that a government or an institution, mostly regulatory body, uses to influence the economic performance of a country. We'll go back to using, taxation, or fuel subsidy removal. These are very recent policies in our country. So when the government feels that the revenue they get from tax is too low or so low, and the government wants to increase what we call non-oil revenue, they pass they go so this tax or this policy goes through all those cycles we talked about. A problem was identified, everything happened until, let's say, adoption. They're about to go into implementation by January. The question is, do all policies by our leaders go through the cycle? And that's where I'm posing a challenge to those of us who are here today, who are supposed to improve, either learn or improve the art of policy making. On May 29, 2023, during the swearing in ceremony, the president just said subsidy is gone. I agreed. If you follow the Petroleum Industry Act, subsidy was supposed to have been removed. So that means it had followed that process of the cycle. But I'm saying that there are times we make pronouncements, policy pronouncements, that did not follow those stages. So because we did not follow those stages, we did not look at the impact. We didn't do impact assessment. Now, if many of you here, I wouldn't know your political level now, your whether you're operating at the local level, at the state level, senatorial, or even federal. But for those, let's look at those operating at the local level. You find that you are the closest to the people. These people know you, you know them. They know you by name, you know them in your heart. If today you are a councillor or a local government chairman, will you rather have policies that the people will be happy with? And I'm not saying we replay to the gallery. I'm looking at impactful policies, but the people will be happy with because either they were consulted in the process of making those policies or they were explained to. Is it public sittings? Is it media? Is it engagement? Visited their homes? I want to believe if you are a local government chairman, a council secretary, a councillor, or anything at the grassroots level, these are probably places you grew or places you know the people by names, like I said. You will be happier if you make policies for the people that the people feel part of. The people actually partook, the people actually have an input into the policy. So for economic policies, I gave you instance of tax, I gave you instance of fuel subsidy. Majorly, these policies are designed to promote economic stability, growth, and development. And at the same time, they also address issues like unemployment, poverty, and income. We now can categorize the economic policies into some components. One, we have the fiscal, and I want us to take note of this. For those that do not have maybe economics background or have not worked in some sectors, this might be sounding new to them. You might know them, but you don't know the names. So you have the fiscal policy. Fiscal policy is majorly when government uses taxation, spending, or what we call borrowing. Borrowing is the same thing as public debt to influence economic policy or economic growth. So if individual citizens go and borrow money and you are owing somebody 1 naira, 1 million, it is not part of fiscal policy, so that's your private policy. But when the government borrows money either from the local or international markets, from banks, from stock exchange, like through bonds and the rest, when that happens, that's a fiscal policy. And so government could decide to increase tax or reduce tax. Government could decide to increase its own expenditure, which is majorly done during budgeting. Government can also decide to increase its borrowings because they want to build more schools, they want to build more roads. Anything government does by way of taxation, public spending, which is expenditure, borrowing, which is debt, I want you to understand that it is called fiscal policy. And majorly that is done through either the Ministry of Finance, the Federal Ministry of Finance at the federal level, or states ministries of finance at the at the state levels. Of course, there are other agencies of government that are party to this fiscal policy, like customs that collect customs and exercise, like FRS that collects taxes, like the debt management office that is in charge of organizing debt borrowing for the government. All these are also part of the agencies that contribute to fiscal policy. The second one is monetary policy. Just have it at the back of your mind that fiscal policy is majorly driven by the Ministry of Finance. Monetary policy, on the other hand, is driven by the central banks. Or in some countries that do not have central banks, we have what we call the monetary authority. So when the central bank manages money supply, interest rates, and inflation to stabilize the economy, everything they do around that side is called monetary policy. So ordinarily, the central bank should not involve itself in fiscal policy. The Ministry of Finance cannot or do not involve themselves in monetary policy. But there is a monetary and fiscal policy coordination because they have impact on each other. So it doesn't make sense for the Ministry of Finance to be reducing tax, right? Or rather increasing tax because they want to control inflation, which is contractionary. Then the central bank is now printing more money or reducing interest rates. But you see, when they coordinate the fiscal and the monetary policy together, it makes it more effective. So for you that are more likely to be in politics, to be in governance, to contest for maybe governor, president, to be appointed commissioners, ministers, they are more likely to do with fiscal policy. So the policy you'll be concerned about will be fiscal policy, while those who are in the central bank will be more concerned and will deal with monetary policy. Apart from these two broad policies, we also have the trade policy. Trade policy and even industrial and wage policies, they can fall under fiscal policy, but in a given situation, you can decompose them. Trade policy majorly deals with import and exports, tariff and trade agreements. If you remember when the government banned the importation of, let's say, some products, or banned the importation of rice, or decide to increase tariffs on some product. Tariff is the monies you pay to bring in goods into the country. So those trade policies, even though in a broad sense could be under fiscal policies, when you decompose the fiscal policy, a trade policy is on its own. So a local government might not likely make a trade policy. A state government will, to an extent, very limited, make a trade policy, except to improve the state's ability to export through competitiveness. But most likely, if you are hoping to be a minister of finance, a special advisor to a minister, work with the FIRS, work with customs, or be a consultant to customs, you will be concerned with trade policy. Then, if you are a labor person, you are more likely to be concerned with industrial and wage policies. But the good thing with this one is that even if you are not a labor person, if you are also working with local governments, working with state government, because you have workers, public sector workers, you are likely to have this. So I took my time on the economic policy because that one is very critical and it affects everybody. It affects your chance. In short, if the economy is not doing well, you stand a chance of not coming back to office ordinarily where votes count. There is an illustration of rice here. After this long explanation, I might not go into that, but you see, the rice farmer faces low yields, and then the government gave some agri credit scheme. With that, the farmer was able to expand his farm, maybe invest into the farm, got some quality seeds, fertilizer, and double his production. Now, because he was able to double production, it's going to increase the food security in the country. It's going to also create jobs because he will need more hands on his farm. And you see, there will now be an economic and social impact because with more food, maybe food will be cheaper, hunger will be addressed, and then there are local employment opportunities. So, as a government person, if you are making policies, you should make policies that have wider impact on the people. There is no point making a policy that will just benefit a few people. But policies such as this that will increase the food security, increase employment, reduce hunger, reduce income inequality will be more beneficial to you as a political office holder and to the people and the economy generally. We go to social policy, right? Social policy is, on the other hand, a set of rules or frameworks designed to improve societal well-being. The other one was more of the economic performance of the country or of a people. But most times, like I said, the economic policy has impact on the social policy because if inflation is low, if unemployment is low and people have employment, if there is food, uh, maybe taxes are affordable, it will now come back to the people. That means the people can go to school, the people can pay their children's school fees, they can either own houses or pay their rent, and they can be able to do many other things. But specifically or directly for social policy, anything that has to do with improving the lives of people, majorly as it affects education, healthcare, housing, and security or social security, that is social policy. Provision of water, social policy. So if you are a state governor, if you are a federal minister, if you are a president, if you are a chairman, if you are a councillor, if you are a senator, a legislator, House of Reps, House of Assembly, majorly, and you are not, you are in this case, you don't need to work with Ministry of Finance to influence fiscal policy. You don't need to work with central bank to influence economic policy. This is where you will play. I just hope, I know I'm not seeing you people, but I hope I'm loud enough. I hope you are hearing me. You could just indicate with any emoji, let me know that you are following me. But what I'm saying is that this is where you, as a person, as a politician, an aspiring politician, as somebody that wants to understand the polity and the politics, the social policy is where you should use your football field. Because at the grassroots, what people need is education, both available, affordable, and accessible. They need water, they need security, they need housing. Nobody is even saying you should give them free housing, but policies that allow people to own their houses, policies that makes it easier for people to pay rent, policies that makes it easier to have social housing. Then the key objectives is what? Welfare and equity. Welfare is just everybody knows the meaning of welfare, to take care of people. We're not talking of dashing them money. Equity is that I should not die because I'm poor, or the rich man should not take everything because he's in power or because he has people in power. So if the rich man is going to take his own, the poor man too, the average man should be able to have what he needs to live with dignity. Components of social policies, right? Is my screen showing?
Yes, sir, we can see it.
Okay. But I'm not seeing, so I just want to understand, after the key components of social policy, can you scroll down? Are they seeing it? So I talked of education policies. I'm not seeing the key components of social policy. It's looking blank. I also hope they are seeing it. We have education policies, we have healthcare policies, we have poverty alleviation. You are trying to, okay, fine. It's showing now. So, like I was saying, education, healthcare, poverty alleviation, housing, labor. These are the key things that you need to know. These are the key things. So you have example of universal basic education. That's an example of public or social policy. If at your own place you feel it's not working, you could want to rejig it. I'm just giving an example. Why is it that despite the universal basic education, people are not coming to school? Why is it that despite the fact that you have healthcare policies, the hospitals are not functioning? And so when you go through that policy cycle we talked of, when you go through it, then you'll be able to address some of these issues. Or you give people should I say, a new lease of life. If you remember that policy cycle, what did you say? You identify the problem, you set an agenda, you also formulate policy. So if you think the people in your, so I can give you an example. There is a place somewhere in the north that during rainy season, the children don't come to school because all of them go to farm. So no matter what you do, those children will not come to school. If you are the is it education secretary or commissioner of education or anything, or the state governor, and you want these children to go to school, you must think of what to do. Maybe you introduce evening schooling. So allow them to go to farm. You've already identified the problem. Rainy season between, let me say, April and maybe September or August. Anyway, you know the rainy season in your place, the call time that they go to farm. These children will not come to school. So if I'm the one, I've identified the problem, right? We set an agenda, and you could decide to say, okay, there is no more morning school during that rainy season. They should go to farm and come to school by 3 p.m. You expect that they go to farm in the morning, they leave farm like by 1 p.m., they go home, they drop their hose, they take their baths. They sure they don't even have to wear school uniform in this case. And they can stroll to school, and you start lecture or classes between 3 and 6. Especially that these schools will be close in their community. So maybe 5, 10, 20 minutes, they're able to walk back home. You will achieve greater results if these children just come to school between 3 and 6 p.m., 3 hours, and they learn something, than you open your school from 8 to 12 or 8 to 1 and nobody comes. That's just an example. We have a case study there of social policy, and we are all familiar with children that hawk, maybe not because they want to, but the economic conditions of their families are not too friendly. So if you have a child, a 12-year-old boy who goes to hawk, while his mates are in class, is hawking, his mates are in school, is hawking, and it is what they sell, what he sells, that put food on the table for his family. Very is a pitiable situation. One, that child is underage, and that's underage labor. But when you stop that child from going to hawk, the family starves. So what do? You cannot insist he goes to school, because at the end of the day, you will lose both. They are starving of hunger, and then the child is not going to attend school or will not be there, even if he's there physically. But when you introduce, example, when you introduce, what do I call now? A conditional cash transfer. It's not the kind of conditional cash transfer we do here that we just give our money. Most places that cash transfers or conditional cash transfers have worked is tied to something. So that's why it is called a conditional cash transfer. So if you tell the father of this child that you will give this child, maybe this child, when he hugs, he makes 2,000 naira profit a day, and that's what he used to eat food. We'll be like, okay, I want to take this boy off the streets. I will pay you this 2,000, which will feed your family, and maybe just supplant what that boy used to bring, so that this boy can go to school. When this boy stops going to school, I will stop giving you that 2,000. So as long as this boy goes to school, I will give you that 2,000. You see, in that way, you're able to achieve something. You're able to take that boy off the streets. He's able to get an education, right? He's able to get an education, and then someday he gets some skills, he gets educated, he leaves the streets, he's able to take care of himself, take care of the family, and we achieve a win-win. We have an educated society, a child is not robbed of his future, and a family does not or did not starve. That's an example of social policy. Now we go to the third one, which is sustainability policies. The issue here is that we need, I won't dwell on this today for so much, so that we will not waste time, but I want us to understand that this is, so when you do anything today that hampers tomorrow, it is not sustainable. When we are talking sustainability in just broad or in a very simple term, it is a policy that aims to balance the protection of the environment with social equity and long-term economic growth. There was a time Nigeria was growing at a very high rate. right? So the people that time, and why were we growing? We're exploiting oil, exploring oil, producing oil, and selling oil. So oil was doing very well. But if we finish the oil and the next 20 years, the people that come after us don't get the oil, what will happen? Or when we were exploring and exporting the oil, this money is concentrated only in the hands of rich people, like rich politicians, rich people in power. And then there is social inequity. In short, the gap between the rich and the poor widens. It is not sustainable. Or, I don't know how many of you are from Niger Delta here. Can I see your hands? When I mean Niger Delta, any state that is producing oil, be it in the south, southeast, southwest, northeast. I don't know if any state in the north central right now is producing oil. Can I see your hands up? Can you imagine that you cannot drink water from the stream in your village or from the well in your village, or your parents or siblings or cousins in the village cannot drink water from the stream because oil has polluted their water? Can you imagine that fishermen in your village, riverine community, and that's the only maybe their means of livelihood, cannot find fish? All the fishes are dead because of oil leakage. So sustainability is supposed to protect the environment, is supposed to guarantee long-term economic growth, and is also supposed to help the people so that they are not exploited. The key principles, like I say, is environmental preservation. That one is planet. Then social inclusion is for the people, and economic viability is for the profit. And we call that the triple bottom line: people, planet, and profit. Once you remember people, planet, and profit, then you've understood the intertwine of sustainability. Protect the environment, protect the people, safeguard or guarantee long-term economic viability. So if you have a local government now and you go and cut down all the trees because you are the chairman, and a company comes, they tell you they want to log woods. They cut down all the trees in your village, and maybe because today you are the chairman, you feel they give you money. What happens in the next 5 years? You go to your village and there is erosion. Rain falls and washes all the farmland in your village. And you see the way karma works. Maybe after politics, you've acquired some land and you go to farming. It is your farmland that it will wash first. But you see, if you are guaranteed those trees, even when some trees are cut, make sure more trees are planted so that in the next 5 to 10 years, those trees are able to replace the trees that are planted. If you are from the Niger Delta, make sure when you go, you just don't collect envelopes from those oil companies and you allow them to do anything. It is your land that is degraded. It is your fish that they are driving or killing. It is your water source that they are polluting. You might think you no longer live in a village, but you might have your most favorite cousin, your grandfather, staying in that village. Or one day you go to the village for chieftaincy title. They go to give you chieftaincy, and then nobody can drink water in the community. Yes, you might think you will buy bottled water from Port Harcourt, from Lagos, from Calabar, but it doesn't mean it all go well that you go to your community and because of your activity or your inactivity, your people cannot drink water, your people cannot farm, your people cannot catch fish. And that is what you should do to protect the environment and the people. There is a Venn diagram. You see the green in that Venn diagram has sustainability. Where the social and economic meets, there is a place that the social and environment meet. There is a place that the environment and economic meet. But where the three of them meet, that's like intersection. If you remember Venn diagram, that's where you are most sustainable. That means the people are protected, the economy is guaranteed, and then the environment is also protected. As a politician, as a political appointee, as an aspiring politician, always strive for that green. If this is what you will take, always strive for that green. Make sure whatever policies you make, whatever decisions you make to protect your people, to protect the environment, to protect your economy, make sure the three of them intersect in that green. Components of sustainability policies are you can look at renewable energy, climate policies, water, waste, pollution, green transportation. There is a case study, I think I've discussed it without discussing it. So I talked of declining fish. So what fish is to somebody in the south could be what farming is to somebody in the northwest. You understand? Or even north central. So when you take away their ability to fish, you are just taking away their livelihoods. Now these policies overlap. They have interconnection, right? So when you remove subsidy, for instance, it can give government economic savings, but it can also increase the transport costs for the people, and it can have impact on sustainability because when more people cannot afford to buy clean gas because it's more expensive, they can go and start cutting down trees, right? So in any time when you are doing, look at the trade-offs. If you want to make more money by increasing tax, do you think it will discourage some people from working, thereby or making employers sack some staff, thereby increasing the number of the unemployed in the society? So you must balance this trade-off. We have a case study of electronic bus, but I think I will jump it for today. Let's look at the short-term stroke, the long-term policy goals and challenges. So let's come back to individuals. If you have salary, you want to do something with your salary, right? But you might want to go today and eat suya, or you want to keep that money and tomorrow go and buy, should I say, a pair of shoe. You believe that with that pair of shoe, you can use it for the next 3 months going to work. So that pair of shoe is long term. That's where it's short term. Now, nobody is saying that you should not eat today, because if you don't survive today, you might not even live for the long term. But we are saying that in doing your policies, in making policies, whether at the grassroots level, at the state level, or federal level, you will need to balance the immediate and future needs. Yes, if truly we need to reduce the amount of money we borrow as a government, we cannot continue to pay subsidy, right? Because we want to borrow, we want to reduce the money we borrow. But we should be able to balance it. So, what is the short term? What can we sacrifice? Can we sacrifice the short term for the long term, or do we want to please the people, or do we want to reduce the number of poverty? So, we want to sacrifice the long term for the short term. There is no hard and fast way of doing this. What is important is that you should balance them. Now, there are political and economic pressures. Imagine if election is next year and I am the president, I want to increase tax. I don't know how many of you know George Bush when he was the president of America. So there are two George Bushes, right? The son was the president from 2000, but the father was the president from 1988. Apart from Joe Biden that did not contest second term, when he wanted to, then he dropped. George Bush Sr., I think in recent times, at least from the 80s, is the only president that lost election at the second term. He lost to Bill Clinton in 1992. And it was simple. In 1988, he was the vice president of Ronald Reagan from 1980 to 1988. And he became president from 1988 to 1992. In 1988, after he became president, he went somewhere and he promised that he was not going to increase taxes. In short, he told them, read my lips. He promised them he was not going to increase tax, but he increased the tax. And that was one of the most singular things that made him to lose election his second term in 1992. So, like I said, where vote counts, if you promise people you will not do this and you do it, they will vote with their ballot paper. So short-term electoral cycles and economic crisis can push policymakers to prioritize quick impact. You remember Buhari refused to implement the Petroleum Industry Act and shifted it by 18 months. I'm sure he feels if he does that, APC will lose election. So like I said, there are economic and political pressures. Then you have uncertainty in long-term benefits. Sometimes those policies can take 10, 5, 20 years to for you to for their outcomes to manifest, for their impact to be felt. So when you are not certain, it makes people to foot drag. So those are some of the challenges or issues that comes with policy making. Am I still? Is anybody still with me? Am I alone? Am I alone? Can I see your reactions? Let me know that I'm not alone. Okay, thank you. So, how do you understand and address these policy gaps? So, when you are doing some of these things, it leads to what we call policy gaps. So, a policy gap is that disconnect between the intended policy objectives and the actual implementation outcomes. Let me just say, you want to go to the market, that's your intended objective, but you ended up on your way to the market.
Okay, since we lost our facilitator, let's just be patient. I'm sure he'll try to join soon. Okay, hello everyone. The class is at full capacity, so I'll need to remove some people so that the facilitator will be able to join. Please, if I remove you, just log in via Zoom and just write your name there so that would still capture your attendance. Apologies for that. So I think I'll remove Sunday Joseph and Suleiman Adeniyi. So please just
I
join
think you
via Zoom.
mean YouTuber.
Yes, join via YouTube. Thank you, Jessica. Please join via YouTube. If not, the facilitator would not be able to come in.
Hello, sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm back now. Can I go on? Please, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we
Welcome
can,
back.
sir. Welcome back.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for the hitch. So I was just talking about how to address this policy gap, right? So these gaps are the policy gaps, as I said, arise from inadequate resources, poor coordination, weak monitoring systems. Remember in the beginning, I talked of evaluation, lack of political will. I'll give you an instance. Imagine the people that are supposed to go and monitor a project to know whether it is working or not are poorer, let me give instance, than the people doing the project. And they go give them money and they just write a false report. It just tells you that even though you have monitoring, that monitoring is very weak. Sometimes there is no political will so we start projects we know we are not going to implement to the letter. We just want to either please the people at that moment or we feel we want to achieve something. The implications of this policy gap is that it leads to reduced effectiveness. Just imagine you taking a drug that they say will cure malaria in 3 days. You're taking this drug full dose twice daily for the next 3 days, and it doesn't cure that malaria. It just tells you that that drug is ineffective. So most times, if you've done everything you're supposed to do in the project, it's supposed to address this issue of policy gap during that project cycle. But when you don't do it well, or something is lacking, or something is lagging, or somebody is not doing their jobs, you have this poor, either poor implementation, poor evaluation, a lack of monitoring, and it will lead to policy gaps. So for you to close these gaps, you just need to strengthen institutions. Most times what we do here, we have weak institutions. Let's look at the police. If the police is supposed to be at a junction to control traffic, let me say from 8 a.m., and then the policeman comes by 8:30, already the traffic has built. It's going to make it more difficult to control the traffic. Or if the policeman is supposed to be there from 8 to, let me say, 11 a.m., peak hours, then come back from 3 to 6 p.m., peak hours. But then this policeman leaves at 9:30, or instead of leaving at 6 p.m., leaves at 5, that very time that people are closing from work. So you see, we have institutional issues. But beyond the individual policeman, if the police force itself does not equip its people with the right things to do, from orientation to kitting to paying salaries to discipline to promotion, you are going to have an issue. Same thing with tax. If you have a tax authority that does not have the right laws in place to either reward hard work or punish truancy, the tax people working with the tax authorities, either at the state or federal level, will do what they want to do, and you're going to have policy gap. So for you to close this gap, you need to strengthen your institutions. You need to engage stakeholders. Have you been in a village or in a community before that the government just comes one day and says they want to bring down, should I say, the community social center, community hall, and maybe build something else there? There was no stakeholder engagement. Definitely the people are going to resist. There is a place in Kenya where houses were built for their animals. And when it was an NGO, donor agencies, and when the people came back, what did they see? They met the animals outside, and then they met the people inside the houses. So you go to a place where people are poor, and because it's a livestock program, you decide to build maybe comfortable rooms for the animals. Meanwhile, these people are either homeless or they are living in thatch houses, mud houses. So my point is that you need to actually coordinate well, else your policies will fail. Why will you go? So what you needed to do there was to coordinate the livestock policy with the housing project so that the rural farmers also have decent accommodation. In that way, they can allow the animals, whether it is goats, cows, sheep, to live in the shelter you build for them. But when you build better houses for animals and human beings, they came back and they found the people outside. Or you go to some places, they needed toilets and you build them schools. or they needed schools and you build them toilets. So let's go to the tools to evaluate policies, right? Are we done?
Okay.
Are we having an issue again? Sorry. Today we have some technical issues, but you can catch your breath. I actually wanted us to project these tools so that people, even if, sometimes you can't remember everything you hear, but you remember what you see. So as they are still trying to come up, just to save time, you should have, if you want to evaluate policies, remember we talked about the policy cycle, right? Identify, adopt, implement, adopt an agenda, implement, monitor, evaluate, improve. But if you want to evaluate, I suggest personally that you should have a policy evaluation checklist. Know the things that you need for your policy to be successful. Are you a political person, whether it is your party that is driving the policies of the government, or you are in government itself and you want to create some policies at any level of government? Have a policy checklist. The relevance is that those policies will address a specific problem. So ask yourself, are you just making policies for making sake, or you've identified a problem? Then what are the impacts? Are they short term? Are they long term? There is no point you go and create policies that might address very short term needs, but the problems in the long term are even bigger. So you will now be left with two problems, because sometimes the short term needs will not be solved, and then the long term needs or problems are bigger. So make sure you look at the impact and know the trade off, like I said earlier. Feasibility. Can it be implemented effectively? And this is where most times we are guilty. Most of those white elephant projects you see, most of those abandoned projects, I know sometimes corruption is an issue, because a project is supposed to cost, let me say, 10 million naira, and then people steal 6, 7, 8 million. There is no way you complete that project. But beyond the corruption now, sometimes at the onset, we don't even evaluate to know if this project can be implemented. You suddenly say we are 200 million people, and you say you want to take 100 million out of poverty. It's not possible. Let's just call a spade a spade. You could do that thing gradually. You can say, okay, we'll take 5 million out, then we'll roll it out. The lessons we've learned, we can now double it to 10 million. After we've created that ripple effect, we can now take another 15 or 20 million. But you cannot just sit down, wake up without any trials, no random control trials, no, should I say, movers advantage. You do not even do anything. And just on paper, you say you are going to remove or move 100 million people from poverty in the next 4 years. So those are some of the challenges that we face. You want to build an airport, and maybe the budget is 100 billion, and that's the local government too, and the total revenue that comes to that local government, maybe in the next 10 years, will not be up to 10 billion. We don't really know that project is going to fail. It's going to fail. So that's the real challenge. Feasibility. You must sit down and do a feasibility study. It's like now you want to buy a car, and you know that the cost of that car is 100,000, and you are earning 15 naira, you are earning 1,000. I'm not saying that if you are earning 1,000, you can't buy a car, but you see, when you are doing feasibility, you will sit down and say your father is the emir, he will give you this amount. Your brother is the sultan, he will give you this amount. Your sister is the bishop, she will give you this amount. Then your employer just likes your face, he will give you half. But you cannot be earning 5,000 and a car is 1 million, and you wake up and say in the next 3 months you buy a car, except you are going to steal. But as long as it's feasibility, you must devise other means. You must also know those means before you can implement. So if you are going to take 10 million people out of poverty in a state, we should be able to take 100 people first. We should be able to take 50 people. We should be able to take 1,000 and know that it is realistic. Else, I think we'll just be lying to ourselves. And you see, that's the problem with politicians, right? I know I'm talking to people who are building capacity for politics. I don't mean to be offensive, but I'm just giving you life insights. They said somebody went somewhere and promised them he was going to build a bridge. And then the people say that they don't have a river. So make sure whatever you are doing is implementable. And like I say, sustainability, does this safeguard future generations? You can't be destroying something because you want to build something else. Make sure whatever you are doing is going to benefit the people today and it will not cause a crisis for the people coming behind them. So why do policies matter? Right? Why do they matter? I think we've lost some time due to technical visiting. I'll try and hasten up. They matter because they play roles. They shape both local and national development. So because of development and governance, you cannot develop. See, every country that has developed, every society that has developed is because somebody sat down or some people sat down, chose the right policies, whether it is budget, whether it is constitution, anything, chose the right policies and followed through. They followed through those policy cycles we looked at. They followed through these things we've discussed, the policy gaps, how to avoid those policy gaps, those pitfalls, how to avoid mistakes. They followed through. Then economic growth and influence. You will not grow economically if you don't have the right policies. Even as individuals, if you just went to school and you didn't make up your mind that you want to read and pass, forget the fact that you might be naturally brilliant. That is one in many cases. But an average student goes to school and decides that I want to learn and I want to pass. So if you do not have the right economic policies, you will not have economic growth. Without economic growth, you will battle with inflation, you will battle with unemployment, you will battle with poverty, you will battle with poor revenue as a country. Of course, you all know that you need the right policies so that it will present the right priorities and commitments of the government. I keep saying, if we're in a society that vote counts, your policies are actually what will make you to either win the election or lose the election. Your policies are what will make you be a popular public servant or somebody that is evaluated by the people. How do you engage in policy discussions? What we are doing right now is one. I don't know the number of people on this call. I think I'm seeing 92 right now. So imagine that 90 of us sat down and just over an hour or two on a Saturday or Sunday evening, we engage in some policy discussions. Before I came here, I myself will have done some research, and I want to believe that people too that were coming here did some background research. You also know the stakeholders, be they councillors, be they chairmen, be they community leaders, religious leaders, women leaders, youth leaders, and you've decided that when you get to that position, or today you are the secretary to maybe the chairman, you are the secretary to the governor, you are the secretary to the any politician, or you are aspiring to be a politician, you know that you will not make policies without identifying the right stakeholders, without engaging them. You will not make policies without some form of research. You will not look for data. So when you come out today and you say you do some research, you don't have data. But when you do all these things, you'll be able to engage in policy discussions. You engage through platforms like town hall meetings, like what electoral college is doing. I want to believe anybody that goes through electoral college, if he goes and engages in politics or policy making, electoral college, you will do far better. You'll build strategies to influence policy. I think industry. You see all those times that market is, if youth are able to mobilize themselves and go to their state house of assembly, go to their chairman's office, go to their local government, go to the governor, go to National Assembly for public hearings, I bet you that whatever you do, you are influencing policy. You could also hold stakeholders accountable and also mobilize them. You could do collaborate with other people, NGOs across divides, development partners. You could engage the media. You could participate in public consultation, and you can join us on any media, any platform, electronic, physical. You could write to newspapers. You could call in during radio programs. All these are ways that you can influence policy. I don't know if I am communicating because, like I said, I'm not saying physically, but this is another thing you should take away from this place. You must think of those ways, what to do to influence policy so that the policies are always right, they are just, and they have impact. How do you do that? But there are challenges, right? There are challenges, but for every challenge, I think there are opportunities. And I'm trying to hasten up now. Policy engagement comes with challenges. You have limited information. You have bottlenecks. You have special interests. You have weak institutions. And we have a very high level of public distrust because in the past, our leaders have actually not delivered. They've not been accountable. So when you go to people and you promise them akara for breakfast, they will not believe you because maybe the person before you had promised them fish and he didn't deliver. The person before you had promised them bread, he didn't deliver. How do you talk to people that year in, year out, the local government has promised them a road? Year in, year out, the state government has promised them a bridge, and they didn't deliver. When you now come and promise them, is it a story building? They can't believe you. Then you can also leverage technology. I think that is what we have going for us that maybe people in the past did not have. Digital platforms, they are there, they are available, they are affordable, they are accessible. Instead of using them for wrong, there's what they call social media for social good. Use technology responsibly, and I bet you are going to overcome any challenge in policy engagement. Collaborate, partnership, and actually use grassroots for those of us at the local level. What are your roles? What are our roles as citizens? So stay informed, be active, hold your leaders accountable. Once you do these three and many others, but do these three, I bet you will be able to play your role in policy development as a citizen. What are the practical steps for policy engagement? I know, I don't know if you are all following the slides, but I know we are going on and off. I've passed the roles of citizen just now. I'm on the practical steps. The practical steps is participate in workshops, be they seminars, webinars, anything that can help you gain insight, anything that can make your voice be heard. Please attend workshops, gain knowledge about policy processes. So you see, the way they tell you that a farmer should not go to farm without his hoe. If you remember when you were in school, when you go to school without a pen or with your pencil, without a book, your teacher will tell you that a farmer cannot or should not go to farm without his hoe. It's the same thing. You cannot want a role in governance, a role in government, a role in politics, and you don't understand policy. I think the ABC, that's where you should start from. Know what policies are, know how policies are made, know how policy affect the lives of people, and know how you can influence policies. Once you know this, I think you are ready for politics, you are ready for governance, you are ready for office. You should join advocacy group. You should create an engagement plan. I'm very particular about this. You should have a personal plan that effectively helps you to engage with policy initiatives, either relevant to your community, relevant to your state, or relevant to your country. Most times, the National Assembly, the State House of Assemblies, they even do public hearings and nobody knows, nobody hears. Then tomorrow, when the president signs the bill into law, it becomes a law, and then we'll now start shouting, but when did they pass this law? When did they pass this law? So it's a very big challenge. Then we should also monitor and evaluate whether the policy itself, the policy process and even the policy implementation. My key takeaways are policy will affect you, will affect me, will affect all of us. If the economic policy does not affect you, the market will affect you. So when you go to the market and there is inflation or prices of goods and services are going up, that's the economic policy affecting you. When you go and your children cannot go to school, especially for those of us that cannot afford private education, that's the economic social policy affecting you. When insecurity is making us run up and down, that's social policy affecting us. When the environment, you see drought in the north or in the part of the world, everywhere, desertification in the north, flood in the north, flood in the center, flood in the south, that's the environment affecting you. When you have pollution, plastics everywhere, you have nylons blocking your gutter, affecting your drainage, and by the time they open that dam from Cameroon, it worsens it. That's environmental policies or lack of environmental policies. But for us to understand these policies, it's good for us to simplify these policies, because truly, what you don't know, you can't make use of it. So simplifying policies makes them relatable, makes them actionable. So if I know that I have an input in social policy, if I know that I should not cut down a tree, if I know that as a local government chairman, I should not go and block drainages because I want to build estates, I'll be actually contributing something. And in conclusion, what do you understand by policy? When you understand those policy cycles, the types of policies, so you will not be calling Minister of Finance when the policies are for CBN, or blaming CBN when the policies are supposed to be for Minister of Finance. So that even if you are an advocate, you are a crusader, you should know where to take the battle to, right? When you understand the policies, the types of policies, you can make informed decisions. Then as a citizen, I think you and I are supposed to be actively engaged and involved in policy making, in the outcomes of those policies, and even the impact. Like I talked of the monitoring, so that we can make them go back through the loop and improve the policy making process or the policy implementation. If we do this, I want to believe the number of us here, if each of us does that in their local government, in their state, in their community, whether appointed or elected offices, we will have improved the policy making process, will have improved the impact or the outcome of those policies, and thereby improve the impact. Most times, impact are long term. So the impact they are going to improve, you will not see it now, but because the input, which is the policy making, and the outcome, which is the immediate benefits, are well, the impact that will happen in the next 5-10 years, you might even be the one or your children that will reap those benefits, those impacts. So I have come to the end of this presentation. I hope it was not boring. I hope it was not confusing. I hope it was not too complex. I have tried to make it as simple. I would have loved to tell you more stories, but time is not on our side. But I want you to have taken one thing from either the policy cycle to the policy gap to the types of policy: economic, social, environmental. Economic, we have money, we have the monetary policy, we have the fiscal policy, we could also have the trade policies, we could also have the labor laws. For social, I think I looked more on education, I looked at housing, I looked at labor, I looked at employment, I looked at security, I looked at water. If you've gained anything today, what I want you to do is sit back, ask yourself, where do you think you can play well along this policy value chain? Will you be a policy maker? Will you be somebody holding people accountable? Or will you just fold your hands and sit back and allow people to mess up our public policy? Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, sir. This lecture was very power-packed, informative, and interesting. We really appreciate you. Thank you, sir. And now,
my pleasure.
As usual, class, it's time for your questions. I'm sure there are many. If you have any questions, please put up your virtual hand and you'll be given an opportunity to ask. Please make your questions brief so that our facilitator will have enough time to take other students. Thank you very much. Okay, we have Ibrahim Umar. I've asked you to unmute. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Good evening, our facilitator.
Good evening, sir.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I really enjoyed it, and this is one of the most interesting class that we had for this cohort, I think, to me. Thank you very much for your presentation. Because we live on policy, and it's policy that's driving us. Without policies, I don't think something will work for even for personal life, not talking of the governance or the general public. So my own is just a short question regarding where you made mention, where you give an example of like if you want to, you have money, so you want to buy, you have two choices. You either buy grain or you buy meat. So you see, meat is a short-term policy, but grain maybe you can use it for times. So my question on that is, which types of policy are we using in terms of driving our governance in Nigeria? Is it the short-term policy or the long-term policy most leaders use? Then my second question is that you made mention of us aligning ourselves into a policy group or an individual policy. I mean, in terms of making some things to become a policy, like you have a gap of where you made mention of a rainy season and dry season, where during the rainy season students cannot, they don't even have time for school until after the school. So in terms of advocating for that to become a policy, do you advise us to go with each group, or we should take it as an individual so that it can go fast? Thank you.
Okay. So let me attempt to answer your first question. Truth is, I don't think I talked about policy inconsistency and somersault today. I know I mentioned it, but without, so we have, I cannot tell you the exact policy we are running. You know why? There are countless governments. When I mean government, we have 36 states, we have local government, we have the federal government. Even the federal government, there are different policies coming from different ministries. So we cannot put all in one basket. But if we have to be sincere with ourselves, looking at how our policies have fared over the past 60 years, 65 years, I would say we have really done more with short term than long term. Because if you even had long-term policies, so before now, Nigeria used to have what we call the national development plans. Those were 5-year plans. We can sit down now and plan where we want our economy to be in the next 5 years. We'll do what we call an input-output analysis. We know the resources required, the money required, just the way you run a budget. But if you notice, the past years, we've just been running annual budgets because the budget is a policy. We've been running annual budget, and I think of recent, we've been doing what we call the medium-term expenditure framework, which is at best a 3-year policy. And 3-year is not long-term. 3-year is short-term to me, but at best is medium-term. So I will tell you that we've more looked at the short-term, and that is why we have to look at, I talked of the trade-off. Yes, nobody is saying that all our policies must be long-term. Even when I gave an example of meat, there are times I see if you are hungry now, you cannot say you won't eat until next month. That's why I say you need to survive the short term. There are times that you need very short term, quick fix. But you cannot do everything short term or everything quick fix. You will need to prioritize, and that's why I talked of long term or rather trade off. So if I've answered you, my point is there are different arms, agencies, organs of government that we cannot put all in one basket. But when we look at everything, I want to believe we've done more of short term. Then the second question you asked, sometimes you are more effective as a group. But if the group is going to slow you down, or if some people now have different passions, some people have different speed, some people even have different connections, you will make more mileage as a group. But there are groups that are already existing that you might not always necessarily need to form new groups. All you need to do is that you could join the existing groups and make you as an individual now can make greater impact in the group. But one of the things we're doing here right now with Electoral Courage, you're already forming a group, and I don't know how you operate, but if I believe that each cohort will, even after you finish, have like an alumni group, is an easy way to launch. So you could do it as an individual. There is no hard and fast rule. You could do it as an individual, do it as a group, or you could even do the two simultaneously. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And yes, we have an alumni. Every cohort usually has an alumni. They call them associates. Thank you. Shedrack.
Okay.
You can go ahead, Shedrack.
Good evening, sir. Thank you. And I have a question regarding policy safeguarding. Like, are there structures that ensures implementation of long-term policies even after the expiration of some administrations? Because this government comes in, enables a policy that is actually friendly to the community, and then another government comes in, and then there is no financing to that project, or there's no continuity to that particular policy that was actually friendly to our community. Okay, maybe the governor of Benue State influences a policy that is encouraging out of school students to go back to school, and then the next government comes and then there is no continuity in that project. So are there institutions or are there ways that we can enhance the continuity of these long-term policies? Thank you. Great job, site.
Great. So yeah, I think your question is why we're here. We want to stop people that understand the implication of policy. So if everybody here becomes a governor, becomes a minister, becomes a chairman, and he has learned here from your question that we need to stop that, I think we will stop that. And that is why we are here. I think I'm throwing back your question at all of us, because this thing is not, it doesn't need any structure. It doesn't need any institution. It is just our behavior. So I'll give an example. In 2019, the UK government was going to conduct an election. I think Johnson, what's his name? Is it Boris Johnson was already the prime minister, and he was running for office again. Something happened. We had a meeting then at their foreign affairs office somewhere in London. I can't remember the place, King Charles Street. Yes. Well, there was so we the African, I think we were doing a scholarship, and we the Africans, we met with their foreign affairs. And they told us something that whichever party wins, the UK's policy to Africa will largely remain the same. And that thing has stuck with me. So you see, that tells you the power of policy consistency, to the extent that even if a different political party wins, they had assured us that their policy towards Africa will remain the same. Most times here, a governor starts a project or a policy, and when somebody comes, he doesn't want to continue because he feels that governor will take the glory. He wants his name. and thereby we have short and abandoned projects or policies. We just, the solution to this that way is a behavioral change. We need to change that attitude. We need to see policies through to the end. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think that is, I think you answered the question that is on the mind of most of the students. There is no more question.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. Thank you for the discussion today, and thank you for giving us your time. We appreciate you always, sir. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thank you. Have a nice night.
Yes, sir.
Good night.
All right, sir. And I'll unmute the class so that they can say thank you. Class, let's say thank you to our facilitator before he leaves us.
Thank you.
You can
Thank you.
unmute us.
Thank you very much, sir.
Have a happy new month ahead.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Happy New Month, Happy Christmas, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Month in advance. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you. God bless you, sir.
All right, thank you, class, and thank you, sir, once again. Lisa, DED, any announcements?
Okay, thank you, Jessica. Well done, everyone who was able to attend the class over the weekend. So for your projects, today is the deadline. The main group will be opened by 7:45 so that each party will drop their projects. And also for this new week, you'll be getting your assignment to choose your presidential candidates and probably gubernatorial candidates too. So just get ready for that. You have just 2 weeks left in the course, so give it your best shot and we wish you all the best.